the CentreSteer podcast, a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners.
Welcome to the CentreSteer podcast, number 152 for November of 2025. CentreSteer is a monthly podcast for Land Rover enthusiasts, hobbyists, and owners around the world. I am John Costage. We're all back together, fellow owners and enthusiasts, Harold, Dixon, and Morgan, together around the virtual campfire.
If you have any leftover 151 from last month, have it now, plus one more.
And it's finally getting to the time of year where we need the virtual campfire. I don't think we really needed it. We could have used a campfire.
I think we need an actual campfire now.
Yes. The glow of the monitors is just not a good replacement for a fire.
You must have a lot of snow, Morgan. We've had snow up here and the salters are out, so no more Series Rovers running around. But you got snow down there in southern Pennsylvania?
Oh, that hurts. That hurts. He's hurting both of us. Did you hear that?
Oh, yes.
Hey, I'm fully aware I'm here for the mild winter, so I'm good with that.
And we now have mild winters here in Pennsylvania.
You can see Morgan on the screen there. He's in his office with his toque on.
Yes. Yeah.
It must be cold in Vermont.
Down. It's a little chilly. It's still not too bad considering it's almost December.
Any snow yet?
We've had one storm of about 5 inches that stuck around for about a week.
Righty.
We've had zero.
Now we have nothing.
We had some flurries, I think, last week. And that's it.
We've had some flurries, but the high for Thursday, Thanksgiving, is going to be 35.
Yep. This month, we talked to Mike Palmer and Chris Wall, and we're excited to introduce you to three men in a Land Rover. Along with Waxy Wainwright, Chris and Mike traveled 40,000 miles through 40 countries in one Land Rover. And only 10 years after the First Overland, this expedition was longer and more harrowing. Along with washboard trails, sand, breakdowns, and amazing scenery, the three men were held hostage, carjacked, and arrested. Stay with us after the news as they tell us about their amazing journey through 3 continents.
If it wasn't just 3 of them being wedged into a tiny Rover, that's enough without the whole carjacking and all that.
And a slightly larger than the First Overland, too, because this was a Series 2A and not a Series 1. Thanks to our Patreon and Buy Me a Tea subscribers for their support. Patreon supporters receive bonus content, including 10 questions, our Land Rover-oriented question and answer lightning round. If you're enjoying the podcast, consider directly supporting the podcast through Patreon, Buy Me a Tea, or even sporting a t-shirt or a sticker. And if you order a sticker or a t-shirt, Harold will mail that to you directly from his own garage.
I even put a little grease in there if you'd like me to.
No charge extra?
Special edition t-shirt that's been used to mop up 90 weight.
You're going to end up starting the grease versus oil argument all again, just on t-shirts.
See, now there you go. That's an opportunity to buy one of each.
Very fair. And then see how they last in the long run.
Correct.
Thanks to Bob. He bought us some more brown water this month, and he says how nice to have the entire band together for a gig at Mar special. Thank you for introducing us to East Botha and Mr. Land Rover, Mike Bishop. Kudos, brown water all around. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bob.
And now it's time for the North American events calendar with our own northern friend, Dixon.
In terms of 2025 events, I would say that everyone should be looking to their local club calendars for the Christmas parties that some of these clubs will be running. For example, Ottawa Valley's is on the 6th of December, but I'm sure all of the other clubs are going to be having something where they're going to be giving out awards, their equivalents of the Lugnut Award, and things like Gasket Under Glass to their more deserving members for the year. But really, we're into 2026. Where the next large event is going to be the Winter Romp up in Maine. What better thing to do with your Land Rover than go to the wilds of Maine, where it's going to be freezing cold, perhaps, and try it all out. That's on President's Day weekend in February.
Is this a special one this year? Is there some special celebration for?
I believe this is the 30th anniversary for it. I would direct everyone to the webpage for more information, winterromp.me. As soon as we get it back up again, there was a crash in the cloud and we're busily rebuilding it as of the time that this episode is being recorded. It might actually be up by the time you actually listen to it. Following that, next interesting event is the Anarch Stewards training event, the second one down in Tularosa, New Mexico on April 15th to 19th. Last year's came across very well, was very well received by all the people, and they're going to be doing it again, but they're making it longer this time. If you're interested in attending and participating in that, talk to your local club, because spots for this rally, when they come available in, I believe, December, are going to be all picked and done by the clubs.
Yeah, someone has to work on the registration website. As soon as we figure out who that is, that website will be up and running, supposed to be up and running in early December, when registration will then open. And you are correct. The members in good standing of Anarch will get to be able to select 2 or 3 people to attend. And then I think sometime in January, if I remember correctly, then it'll be open to all remaining clubs to be able to send folks. To be clear, this is an Anarch club activity only. So you do need to have your club be part of Anarch in order to attend the stewards training.
And at this point, Anarch is going to be assisting with three rallies for the coming year. The first being the Joe Lucas Nada Rally. That will be the 31st. That's going to be near Bottega Bay in California. The second is the National Rally put on by the Solihull Society. That will be in Ouray, Colorado, at the end of July, beginning of August. And the third one, under discussion at this point, is the Southern California Land Rover Club, the Big Bear Rally, towards the end of September at the Holcomb Valley Ranch in California. For all of these rallies and so on, we are way ahead of when they're happening. So plans and information can change. So continue to listen to the podcast, because future months will have more information on all of these. And as we discover when other rallies, such as the Mid-Atlantic, the Birthday Party, Robisonia, and others, are actually going to be taking place.
And we have some breaking news for you, Dixon. The second Gulf Area Rover Romp is going to be held on March 20th through 22nd in 2026 at the Retreat RV and Campground in Robertsdale, Alabama, where it was last year. Or no, year before. It was the year before. And trail riding will take place again at the Grand River Motorsports Park, and registration is to open in January, along with they'll provide additional information and announcement in the coming weeks. So that was Charles Bell of the Gulf Area Rover Club, and made that announcement, I think, a week or so ago.
So if it's the second one, does that make it the GAR, or does it make it the double GAR?
GAR squared.
Or do you start adding more R's to the end? It's just a longer GAR.
That could
Shouldn't he do this rally on Speak Like a Pirate Day?
Probably.
I'm sure. Why don't we move into the news then, shall we?
Yep.
JLR posts heavy loss after cyber attack. So JLR reported a heavy loss for 3 months to the end of September, a period during which they were badly affected by the serious cyber attack. They posted a £485 million loss before tax and exceptional items, compared to a profit of $398 million for the same period a year ago. The cyber attack, which took place at the end of August, forced JLR to shut down its computer networks, leaving it unable to operate its highly automated production lines throughout September and early October. Car sales to consumers were also affected initially, although JLR was later able to develop workarounds with parts supplies to service outlets was also badly disrupted. The company says production has now returned to normal levels. JLR reported additional cyber-related costs of £196 million on top of the headline loss. Those are understood to include the expense of bringing in outside consultants and other support in response to the hacking attack. According to the car maker, its revenue for the quarter fell 24% from £6.5 billion last year to £4.9 billion last year. This heavily affected by production stoppage. However, U.S. tariffs on cars exported both from the UK and Slovakia also had an impact, as did the phasing out of a number of Jag models. And the crisis at JLR helped drive UK car production in September to its lowest level for the month since 1952, according to Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders.
Wow.
Ouch.
And my favorite was the JLR press release at the very top in big letters. Production now returned to normal levels following cyber incident. Then they go into the details of the press release.
That was almost a full quarter of having production mostly stopped.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
That's a bigger stoppage than when they ran out of computer chips, wasn't it?
For sure. And of course,
they cannibalized from other models. I think they stopped making certain models just so that the Defender could be produced.
They didn't stop all production, just some of it.
And I think there were some features you didn't get, no heated seats or something. They just worked on, I think, primary systems.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. And in the press release, they talk about how much money they lost, and there's some follow-up on the cyber incident. They say they took decisive action to restart business and support their stakeholders and recover operations.
Of course, they're going to say that.
Are they taking action against Tata Computer Services that allowed this to happen?
No, there's no mention of that. But the bleeping computer did give a little more information. They said the cyber attack was announced on September 2nd, forcing the British car maker to shut down production at major plants and send its staff home. A follow-up statement confirmed that data had been stolen during the cyber attack, which was claimed on a telegram by the cybercrime group Scattered Lapsus Hunters. And then production restarted on October 8th. So I hadn't heard about the data loss.
It doesn't come as a surprise to me, but
considering their credentials were on the dark web in July, I'm sure there was data loss before then, as well as during.
And I vaguely recall maybe 2 years ago or something, us discussing a breach, cybersecurity breach that they had, that they tracked down to passwords on Post-its or passwords that hadn't been changed in like almost a decade. So it really was no surprise that their
passwords are carved into the granite pillars on the building.
Hopefully their password wasn't password, just as the password for the Louvre was the Louvre, or just Louvre. You would be surprised how often default passwords remain in systems after they've been stood up.
Default PIN numbers, too, like 1111.
Yeah, but they're really easy to remember. Think of how many months you would lose if you didn't know how to log into your systems. Oh, wait, no.
Maybe a month and a half of production?
Yeah. In addition to everything being shut down, production being shut down, also finally killing off the Jaguar models at that same time did not help at all. So I do have to ask.
Did it? Really? Did it? Are you sure it wasn't just no one noticed?
If they had any Jaguar models, they might have sold more Jaguar models than Land Rovers.
If they made any, they might have, yes.
Right.
Yeah. At this point, are we required to pronounce it Jaguar instead of Jaguar because there are no Jaguar?
Well, that's actually how the British say it, Jaguar.
I didn't realize we could have Land Rover dad jokes. All right, we're moving on. JLR selects Electrobit as the strategic provider for foundational software and engineering services to underpin the next generation software architecture for its vehicles. So Electrobit announced that JLR will use Electrobit's software platform and automotive OS as an operating system, offering to build their next generation EVA Continuum electrical architecture, which will be featured in their products from 2024. And just for the record, this article, what is the date on this article? I thought it was current. So it may be a little older, but still interesting to read. The leading car makers are challenged to keep pace with the rapid industry transition towards software-defined vehicles, Electrobit software and engineering services. JLR has been able to accelerate the production of electric vehicles, next-generation cars. They've enabled JLR to develop electronic control units more easily, reducing both development time without compromising quality, safety, and security. And since 2021, Electrobit has provided JLR access to full real-time computing portfolio, including some firmware over-the-air updates functionality and state-of-the-art embedded security for the ECUs on their new platform. The reason I brought this up is, for Dixon's benefit, notice they're not using any Tata services.
So I hope somewhere buried in the detailed press release. There's some reference to NIST, maybe 837-53, ISO 27001 and 2, or perhaps even TOGAF.
What I'm just pondering here is that you get together at a Cars and Coffee or some other gathering, and you're looking under the hood and you're all talking about what engine does your car have. This perhaps suggests that someday we'll be getting together and asking, what OS is your car running?
Next, latest JD Power survey shows Porsche, Mazda, and GM owners are most satisfied. And according to JD Power in its recent survey, the most satisfied premium car or SUV buyers drove away recently in a nice new Porsche. And they're talking about the premium car and premium SUV segments. And it's not just about the car, it's also the dealership and the follow-up experience, if there is one. This is the JD Power 2025 U.S. Sales Satisfaction Index study. Looks into what customers want when buying a car outside of the engineering of the vehicle. JLR's report is based on responses from 32,616 buyers who purchased or leased their new vehicle from March of 2025 through May of 2025. And the report also gives a key piece of feedback for car dealers, pointing out that nearly 1/4 of buyers want a follow-up on their vehicle's features, but it never comes. They don't receive it. And then later here, while it's no surprise that Porsche is ranking top of premium car buyer satisfaction for a third straight year, Land Rover and Infiniti following in second and third place is interesting. Out of 1,000 points, Porsche scored 855. Land Rover wasn't far behind at 838. Infiniti at 835. Mercedes comes in at 833. Lincoln sits above BMW with 827. Genesis sits at the bottom of the table behind Volvo with 804 points. There's a good positive. Land Rover is number 2 in the premium segment for people who like their car, at least initially.
Yeah, that's a big change from a few years ago. Hasn't been long since people were not necessarily all that satisfied within even a month of purchase of some of the models.
Keep in mind, this is a study that's tailored to the premium brands, which, if you look overall, might not be top of list in another survey.
Yeah, they've been at the bottom
sure.
with everybody else, at least on the, I think on the reliability side, they were towards the bottom.
Yeah, I think also some of what I'm remembering is like the introduction of the Evoque and the Velar, especially. The Evoque actually was reasonably popular, and that's a fairly affordable model considering, but the Velar had some definite performance and just sort of satisfaction problems in the early days.
Well, that's some positivity for Land Rover, so we're now going to take it away. This is the new study reveals that 10 cars 2025 owners get rid of within just a year. This is from November of this year, 2025, and this is from Slash Gear. Again, these are cars that people will get rid of within a year. So they bought a new car and they get rid of it. Jag F-Pace owners get rid of their car 13.3% of the time. Next is BMW, the 5 Series, 13.4%. Then Land Rover Discovery, 13.6%. For the 26 model year, Land Rover has announced multiple special editions of the Discovery, including the Tempest Edition, which the brand describes as the most luxurious Discovery ever. The Disco hasn't been selling as well as other models in the JLR stable. And in 2023, it confirmed that it was looking to overhaul that model in order to generate new interest. Fast forward 2 years, and that overhaul has yet to arrive, with special editions presumably launched as a stopgap measure. Even buyers that have opted for Discovery over Defender or Range Rover haven't kept it long. According to IC Cars analysis, 13.6% of new buyers sold their car in a matter of months. It isn't just a Discovery either. 3 out of 10 of the most frequently resold models are Land Rovers. Getting ahead of us here. Yes, the next one is the BMW C-Class. Then the Land Rover, Range Rover Evoque at 16.4%. It might be the baby Range Rover, but the price isn't all that small. The base spec Evoque starts at around $50,000, and then it can go up to $65,000 or north of that. After putting the Evoque to the test in 2025, we found its fuel economy to be far below the segment average, so buyers can expect big fuel bills too. They're looking at, as I said, a 16.4% of buyers sell it within a year. Then next at 16.7 is the Mercedes-Benz GLA. Then a Mercedes CLA at 20%. The Mercedes GLB, 21.2%. The Porsche Macan at 22.2%. And topping the list, you know what, you love it in your hearts, the Land Rover Discovery Sport, 28.3% of buyers by a significant margin. The car that's most frequently resold when the year is the Disco Sport, slotting below the Discovery. The Sport is the most affordable car. The Evoque also makes an appearance, as we mentioned earlier, but the Evoque was at, I think 16%. The Disco Sport here is at 28.3%. The current generation of the Disco Sport has been on the market for a long time by standards of the segment. Its last major facelift debuting in 2020. At its launch, we became impressed with a refined cabin and plentiful tech, but in the intervening half-decade, its segment has become more crowded with highly competitive rivals. The car has also gained a reputation for being less reliable than many of the rivals, which likely contributes to the exceptionally high resale rate.
I wonder how that dissatisfaction percentage on the Disco Sport, aka the Freelander 3, compares with the dissatisfaction of the Freelander 1.
Ooh.
The other thing I noticed is that 3 of the top 10 are Land Rovers, but I think it looked like 5 of the top 10 were Mercedes.
Yeah, it makes me wonder.
Four
Mercedes.
Mercedes.
Gotcha. It still makes me wonder how much just affordability in general affects these vehicles. Because this was US based, correct?
Yes.
You have to ask, because one of the statistics I remember hearing about the mightiest of all Land Rovers, the NAS Freelander, that it led to 99% of an NAS Freelander buyer would not touch another JLR product. Now, let's take the bottom one here, the Disco Sport. Maybe they're selling it because they like the mark and they're upgrading to a Defender or something like that. So it's being sold. Why? They're upgrading or they don't like it?
Well, they do say it has reliability issues.
Yeah, but you can say that about all the vehicles, and half the time it's people are unhappy with the infotainment system, not necessarily the mechanics of the vehicle. It'd be interesting to see the statistics behind this.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about as well. Especially the other part of this is this year, and I would say most of last year, we had good production of and availability of the new Defender. They cleared their backlog, which was pretty massive. At least I think they cleared it. Maybe they have a backlog again. But like during
to the shutdown,
during lockdown, yeah. But during the lockdown, the new Defenders were pretty much unobtainium. And people were forced to buy other models of Land Rover. So I wonder how many people had purchased a Disco 5 or maybe a Disco Sport, and then were like, oh, finally I can get the Defender.
So these are the stopgap Rovers.
Yeah, I'm curious because, again, they don't really show us any stats.
Or
like
what
Dixon
time
said,
period they
what
did the survey.
do?
I think part of that's the time period. And you could be right. We are, 4 years away from the pandemic issues, maybe 3.
Yeah, but they had that backlog for years afterwards.
The Land Rover Defender now comes in pickup form
with the big asterisk
through a brave coach builder. So last year, this is Top Gear, brought you renders of the Heritage Customs Valence pickup, or Valiance. I guess it's Valiance pickup. Sorry about that. Little misspoke there. Essentially a Defender 130 with a portion of the roof chopped off and pickup bed added out back. Today, we've got even better news. It lives in the real world. Check out the pictures. Now simply called the Heritage Edition. It's based on a Defender 130 X Dynamic SE, 413 horsepower, 5-liter supercharged V8 with the bed out back. It's wicked looking thing. Looks remarkably similar to the renders we saw last year. And it lost the spare wheel on the roof. It now goes without the garish Heritage branding on the tailgate. They've got pictures of the interior too, which we'll look at those, complete with tan interior. You can choose any color you want, but they say you want the tan upholstery. There's a tie-in with another coach builder. Urban Automotive has also resulted in the Urban Edition. And while we've only renders on this one, it's safe to say that they wouldn't want to come face to face in a dark alley. It's basically all blacked out. If only you'll likely be blinded by the light strip on the roof. Yeah, there's this massive light strip on the roof. And it's set to make its UK debut at the Goodwood Festival of Speed in July of 2026. So this is the Coach Builder made 130, which still would not be available in the US, correct? Or it would still have the tax because it's a pickup. Is that even though it's from a Coach Builder?
It depends on whether you can actually call this a pickup, because that bed is so tiny, I don't think you could fit one suitcase per passenger in it.
Yeah. And is this a UK based Coach Builder? Since they're using the term Coach Builder, probably.
Yes.
If you want to just chop it here, that's a lot less expensive.
Give me an email. I can make that happen for you.
You deliver the 130, Harold will take care of, turn into a pickup for you.
But I'm going to make a heavy case for ditching the second row seats and shaving the door handles off, making a real pickup. Long bed, like God intended.
And now probably the most expensive Range Rover ever produced, I'm guessing, $600,000 Range Rover Holland and Holland edition outguns the Royce Cullinan.
The Holland and Holland edition has traditionally been the most expensive Range Rover you can buy, so why break tradition now?
Range Rover sits at the top of the Land Rover family, and both SV trims, the normal one and the SV Black, cost comfortably north of $200,000. But Overfinch, the British company that specializes in customized Land Rovers, has come up with something even more special based on the Range Rover SV. This is the Holland and Holland edition, an ultra-exclusive version of the Range Rover. Holland British gunmaker may seem like an odd choice to inspire bespoke Range Rover, but all three brands, Land Rover, Holland and Holland, and Overfinch, clearly cater to a demographic that enjoys the finer things in life.
Yes, guns and alcohol, the finer things.
Only 25 examples of the Holland edition will be produced. The exterior immediately signals it is no ordinary Range Rover. It is in British racing green. You'll see Holland insignia placed on the grille. Gold details dot the exterior, and it's on 23-inch alloy wheels. The real magic is inside, though. Take the door panels, for instance, which are museum-worthy works of art on their own. They feature rich walnut inserts, hand-engraved four-end diamonds, a stainless steel plaque, and meticulously stitched leather.
Does it still come with the bottomless whiskey drawer?
No. In the trunk, this special Range Rover has more surprises. 2 companion chests are available. Their finishes matching that of the passenger compartment. Open them and you will find elegant storage for fine-cut crystal champagne flutes, 2 silver bottle stoppers, fine crockery, and even a cutlery set. Being a Holland edition, there's also space here for 2 shotguns. Oh, they say space for. They don't include the shotguns. Apparently, shotguns are added on your own. You have to supply your own shotgun.
Batteries not included.
So there you go. That's your $600,000 Range Rover Holland and Holland edition. Place your order now. Only 25 ever made. And next, Defender is celebrating the 45th anniversary of Camel Trophy while looking ahead to the new Defender Trophy competition, making a positive impact on the people and places it encounters. The new Defender 110 Trophy Edition will be central to the adventure. The distinctive expedition-ready 4x4 recently joined a global celebration of 45 years since the first Camel Trophy was held, an inspirational event synonymous with Defender that's reflected in the deep sand-glow yellow color exclusively created for the edition. Land Rover Classic and Defender were proud to host the Camel Trophy Club's 45th anniversary event at Eastnor Castle in the UK. 35 past participants and more than 200 enthusiasts of the competition, an opportunity to hear about the Defender Trophy firsthand, witness historical moment as the new Defender 110 Trophy Edition and Classic Works, get that wrong, Classic Defender Works V8 Trophy, that's the name of the vehicle, Classic Defender Works V8 Trophy.
Wow, let's just make the names long again. Let's keep going.
Led a convoy of original Camel Trophy vehicles through the Eastnor Castle estate. A new short film on Defender's YouTube channel featuring former Camel Trophy participants, including 1989 winners Bob and Joe Ives and 1997 competitor Karen McDonald, explain how the original trophy's spirit of adventure, camaraderie, and teamwork will live on. Defender Trophy competitors will need to cooperate to navigate through terrain, conquer extreme physical challenges, and solve tactical tests, all united by a greater purpose to benefit conservation partner Tuscan Africa. The first in a series of Defender Trophy films coming to the Defender YouTube channel, and we'll have a link in the show notes where you can get access to that and watch the video. It's a 5-minute video, Lisa's first one. And we heard about this at MAR because folks had just come back from that. So we heard some stories of that. Looking forward to seeing those the videos and the Defender Trophy. I like how they have to really reinforce the House of Brands Defender in there. It's hard to say. Instead of saying Land Rover Classic and Land Rover, it's Land Rover Classic and Defender.
I'm curious because I don't remember. We did discuss it at MAR, but my memory's a little fuzzy at this point. Did that celebration include any of the discoveries or the Freelander from the Camel Trophy years? I think it did.
It did. You may remember that
yes.
Bill Cooper has
Yes.
an original Freelander that was in the Camel Trophy located in the UK. So he did drive that.
Does this mean that in later years, the Defender Trophy might be getting replaced by the Discovery Trophy or the Discovery Sport Trophy?
Or the Evoque Trophy.
The Disco Sport Trophy. All right, we're going to move on to this. So Cheery fails to replicate Range Rover's 999 step stair climb in viral video fail. A dramatic stunt attempted by Chinese carmaker Cheery has gone viral after its full win X3L SUV failed to climb the 999 steps to Heaven's Gate, the same staircase famously conquered by a Range Rover Sport in 2018.
The irony being here, the vehicle that fails is called a full win.
The incident took place at Tiananmen Mountain in China, where the brand sought to recreate Land Rover's celebrated promotional feat. Instead, footage shows the full win X3L losing traction near the top of one of the steep stairways before sliding backwards, bouncing off a landing, and crashing into the stone guardrail. Several rail sections and pylons were damaged in the process. Cheery has since issued an apology and promised to repair the historic structure. The full win X3L range extender plug-in hybrid launched earlier this year didn't appear to lack power on paper. It uses a dual motor all-wheel drive system producing 422 horsepower, but even those figures aren't enough to get the SUV to the top of the 45-degree staircase, which stretches more than 200 meters vertically. In contrast, the Range Rover Sport remains the only vehicle known to have successfully climbed all 999 steps to the natural stone arch. That 2018 stunt was heavily controlled and used a specially prepped vehicle, but it set a benchmark the other brands have clearly been eager to match. Cheery claims the failed attempt wasn't due to a lack of power or traction, but rather a safety equipment malfunction. The brand says a shackle securing the safety rope unexpectedly detached, allowing the rope to wrap around the right wheel and compromise the climb. Despite the embarrassing outcome, Cheery reportedly plans to attempt the feat again, this time with improved all-terrain tires, revised torque management, and a new pitch angle monitor for the SUV's adaptive suspension.
And perhaps a better rope.
Better shackle.
Yeah, safety system.
When you tighten the shackle, you need to tighten it and then back off, a quarter, right?
Yeah, but not 3/4 is then it may unexpectedly come off.
And then moving to non-Land Rover news, but this is still inspirational. Without it, there would be no Land Rover, most likely. We're going to go with there would be no Land Rover. But here in Podcast Central, we are an hour away from Butler, Pennsylvania. And Butler, Pennsylvania is the birthplace of Jeep. And they had a massive fire that destroyed the former Bantam Jeep building up in Butler County, as we like to say around here, up in. Firefighters worked for hours to knock down the flames that tore through the old Bantam Jeep building in Butler County. Calls came in around 2 a.m. Firefighters were greeted by massive flames shooting through the roof and windows of the historic building. They also battled heavy smoke in the area. That no one was injured, and they took care of the flames. According to the Butler fire chief, the fourth floor exterior, all floors inside, and the roof of the building collapsed as a result of the fire. The fire rekindled around 9 a.m., and it continued to smolder. The building is unstable and will need to be demolished. A time frame, of course, had not been established. And then Amy Pack with the Explore Butler County. Jeep is an important contribution to our nation's history. And again, we're very proud to have had that come from Butler County. So to see this building, like, it is really sad for us. Bantam created the first Jeep in 1940 within 49 days. The U.S. Army had requested auto manufacturers to help them create a new reconnaissance vehicle. One Jeep that was made in the factory lives in Butler. It's kept at the Butler Built Garage on Barracks Road. Quote to us, is very special to have one of these in my respect. It's a treasure. Who runs the garage? That was John Pro. Following the fire, nonprofit Friends of the Bantam Jeep Association, which dedicated to preserving and promoting Butler, Pennsylvania's legacy as the birthplace of the Jeep, issued a statement, and they're a nonprofit, and they oversee the annual Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. They're deeply saddened by the fire. The historic site is a powerful symbol of American ingenuity and Butler's proud legacy as a birthplace of Jeep.
Sadly, now that building is gone, there is nothing left.
And the other article here, give a little more background to, this is from the Trib. 1940, American Bantam Car Company of Butler was awarded a contract to produce reconnaissance cars capable of hauling soldiers, supplies, and heavy artillery across rough terrain. It came to be called the Jeep. After an initial run of 2,675 vehicles, the Bantam factory never produced another one. According to the Butler County Historical Society, instead, it began manufacturing military trailers, torpedo motors, and other items until it was purchased by Armco in 1956. Armco tore down the factory, but the built brick administration building remained. A little shout out to our Bantam Jeep friends, because probably Land Rover folks know all the Jeeps, whether they were Bantam or Willys. And what was the other one? There was a third
Ford.
style.
Ford.
MB, GPW, Ford, and Willys.
That was the inspiration for the Wilkes brothers to help create the very first Land Rover in 1948.
The CentreSteer was actually, they used a Jeep chassis to build that.
And the CentreSteer was a prototype for the first Land Rover, where it sounds like it sounds. They put the steering wheel in the middle of the vehicle. That didn't last long.
But you got to try stuff to figure out if it's not going to work.
Yeah, and they were looking to make a vehicle that could be used both as a road vehicle and as farm equipment. And
farmers sit in the middle.
Generally, yeah, farmers sit in the middle.
And not only that, from an economic standpoint, they can make only one version and export it anywhere and not have to worry about left-hand drive versions and right-hand drive versions. It was a neat idea,
Yeah.
just didn't quite work out.
To the Bantam Jeep family, our condolences on the loss of that historic building. They do have, coming up in 2026 is the 15th anniversary of the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival in Butler County, taking place June 12th through the 14th. And that is the birthplace of Jeep. And it's also the 250th anniversary of America. There we go.
Who owns the property that demised building is on?
I do not know. I don't think it was owned by the Friends of the Jeep, because I think maybe Armco may still, or whoever bought Armco, they were a steel company. I think they're still around. I'm not sure if Armco's still around or not.
I just was thinking out loud if we could put together like a crowdsource to maybe fund some sort of monument where the building was.
Right.
Interesting idea.
I wonder if it had become a historic property in any way.
I think if it had been, they would have had that in the write-up, because anytime something happens to an historic site around here, they usually indicate that in the news article.
Fair point.
Although having buildings mysteriously burned down is a way to get around the restrictions involved in historic properties. Not to say there's any sort of conspiracy involved in this.
And finally, with the holidays, Christmas coming up, I saw there was a new book that's come out. I have one on order, but it hasn't arrived yet. It's a little book of Land Rover trivia written by the secret car journalist. This was published back in February. You can get it for under $20. It's actually $13.50 on bookshop.org. Yes, you can also buy off of the Big A place, but I've been getting my books off of bookshop.org lately. So we'll have a link to it in the show notes. But according to the description here, you'll discover the untold story of JUE 477, the first ever Land Rover. That's the first ever production Land Rover. How Land Rover helped a British explorer cross Antarctica, why Queen Elizabeth's Land Rover was one of her favorite vehicles, and other such things.
Besides the fact that the Queen was just cool,
it only added to the coolness.
Just imagine how useful a book like this would have been years ago when certain clubs would play Rover Jeopardy every year for their holiday parties.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good study material.
That's right. Yes, as you order that book, so as you're going to your Rover holiday club parties, you can be forearmed with Land Rover knowledge.
You can be king of the nerds.
Land Rover nerds. King of the Land Rover nerds.
What's the difference?
You can at least start some good arguments.
I wonder, did you contribute to it, Dixon? Is it ask how many NAS Freelanders, or if there's more of those than functioning 80 inches?
Well, that'd be a good question. Anecdotally, We know 11 showed up at Greek Peak.
11
no
what?
Freelanders. 1180s.
Oh, there you go.
1180 inches were at Greek Peak. No Freelanders. Though I maintain that there's only one potential running NAS Freelander, but I think about 4 in different colors have appeared over the past several years on various for sale forums.
You sure it's not the same truck just getting repainted?
Earl Scheib paint jobs. I'm sure that's what's actually happening. Bucket of paint, broom, go a long way.
If you're being quote unquote forced to listen to the podcast and you're sitting next to your spouse, maybe in the car, and you're thinking what you could get them for the holidays that's Land Rover related, this might be the ticket for you. A little book of Land Rover trivia. We'll link to.
Yeah. So if you can manage to get your hands out of your bindings, you can write this down.
Jeez. Wow. On that note, that's the news for November 2025. Welcome to the podcast all the way from the United Kingdom. We have 2 of the 3 men in a Land Rover. Joining us are Mike Palmer and Chris Wall from 3 Men in a Land Rover. Welcome, gentlemen, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think many, especially here in North America, do not know about 3 Men in a Land Rover. It's 40,000 miles, 40 countries, and 1 unique adventure in a Land Rover we call 10. You guys put out a book because it is the 40th anniversary?
No, 55 years.
55
years.
Okay, there we go. Math, not...
Wow.
So let me make sure I have this clear. We have 2 guys representing on the show for 3 guys who traveled around in a Rover called 10. Okay, there's some numerology going on there.
Yes, exactly. In a Series 2A.
Shall we get 10 sorted out first?
Yes,
this
please.
is a Land Rover-based podcast, so yes, let's talk about 10. Before we do that, why don't you introduce yourself so people get to know your voice and know who you are as we go through this conversation?
My name's Mike. That will do, I think. In many ways, I was the latecomer because I was bogged down doing my final exams at university when I got this letter from Chris, whom I'd known for many years, which basically said, do you want to come around the world in a Land Rover? And without a great deal of thought, I just said, yeah. And so I took my finals.
As you do.
One should not overthink a question like that.
No, exactly. I don't think I ever regretted it, except possibly the first night we were camping. And I think, like all of us, we thought, what the hell have we let ourselves in for? So I was the latecomer. So if we're going to go back about the origins of this whole expedition, I think Chris is your man. But I never regretted it. And then we spent a summer getting everything as much as we could possibly together for 10 to take us off on our journey at the beginning of September. And 10 very quickly, the registration plate of the Land Rover was TEN 423, hence 10.
And now another number plate we have to remember. In all the important number plates, we're adding it to the list of important number plates.
At least this one spells something.
Right.
Chris, introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, I'm Chris. I met Mike at school. We were at school together. And the sort of inspiration behind doing 3 Men in a Land Rover was Mad Dogs and Englishmen and all that sort of thing. But in the 1960s, there were mad Brits sailing around the world single-handed, non-stop, doing most peculiar things. And it rather captured everyone's imagination in the UK. And since we didn't have an ocean-going yacht, we thought, what about a land-based challenge? Looked at our Phillips Atlas and drew a squiggly line in Barrow around the world. We reckoned we could drive out to the Far East from London, back through the Middle East, quick circuit of Africa, back across the Sahara, and back to Blighty. And that was it. So Mike was, I have to say, is the brains in the party. And hence he went to university. And I was just earning a crust in an advertising agency as a visualizer. So that's me. And Waxy, we should introduce because he's not here. He was studying as a horticulturalist in Brighton's Park Department. And we designated him to be in charge of stores, munitions or whatever, and in charge of looking after 10, making sure that the wheels remained firmly fixed at all times.
And they were.
And they were. It was an amazing vehicle, actually.
Yeah. So what is 10 exactly? It's a Series 2A, I believe.
Series 2A hard top, yeah, long wheelbase, and petrol engine. We were told must go petrol engine because of problems with injectors with diesel engines. If you're in the remote jungles of Africa or the Far East, would not be a very clever thing to be doing. But for idiots like us, it was amazingly robust. And though we broke lots of bits of it, like leaf springs and U-bolts and split tyre rims and all sorts of things, it remarkably brought us home safely, which was quite extraordinary because it's already had 50,000 miles on the clock when we bought it for £400.
It's just broken in at that kind of number.
Yeah.
And it was a right-hand drive vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And I think this is the amazing part. You added a 60-gallon fuel tank to it. Where did that sit exactly?
That was behind the bench seats.
Okay.
Slung across in the back of the Land Rover. And we had a separate pump which pumped it into the main fuel tank as and when we needed it. But it was a great thing to have because it gave us a range of about 1,200 miles without filling up.
That's just amazing to me, 1,200-mile range.
And
Nice.
the other thing to be said about it was that financially, if it was cheap petrol, we could fill it up. And there were times around the world where we got sponsorship from petrol companies. It wasn't just a question of filling up the normal tanks, but would you mind filling up the 60-gallon tank too?
Right here,
Yeah,
they are
if they're
thinking,
giving it
it'll be
away.
cheap. It'll be cheap to fill you up. Oh, wait a minute. You got that 60-gallon tank.
Exactly.
But if you have sponsors giving it away for free, you want to get as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The only alarming thing that happened to us was crossing the border, I think, into Hungary. And the customs officials there took the top off and flicked a lighter to look inside to see what was in the tank. But thankfully, it wasn't the end of the journey so early into the route.
Yes. I did read that in the book. I was like, well, yeah, flicking their bick. At least, as you said, it didn't blow up. That's good. It originally was a utility company vehicle that you guys got secondhand, right?
That's right, yes.
And the important thing, we're not going to make people wait for this, but what happened to it? What happened to 10?
That is the big question. When we got back, of course, we were jobless, penniless, and managing to sell it for what we bought it for seemed like a good deal at the time. And the guy that bought it said he was going to take it back to India. Whether 10 still exists or is now a chicken hut in somewhere in Chittagong or in those far-flung places, we just don't know.
Yeah, because at the end of the book, you have a postcard where, and I couldn't read that last word, so that does make sense now with giving it a home in India. Okay. Sounds like we need to get Adam Bennett on the case.
Yes. Funny enough, the publishers, Porter Press, they did put a little clip on YouTube asking people, and where it was. And funny enough, now I live in Wales, my local garage mentioned it when I went in there not long ago. So I've heard about that Land Rover. Some people have seen it anyway, so we shall find out.
So there's a good chance it still exists?
I think, isn't it the statistic that 78% of Land Rovers ever made are still on the road?
Or at least parts of them are.
Yes.
Or stacked up as a former chicken coop on some island in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Speaking of the First Overland, how much influence did that have on your journey? Did you guys, I assume you knew about the First Overland.
Absolutely, yes. There was an element of competition, I think, because one of my aunts knew one of the participants, JJ, the photographer. And I think during the journey, we fairly often referred to them and said things like, bet they didn't do this. But both teams of us actually tried to take a shortcut through Iran, which was quite interesting. When we went through it the first time, because we kept going out to the Far East, we drove through Iran and then up to the Caspian Sea. I have to say, beautiful country, and if ever the saying was never judge a book by its cover, I think the same is true about the government. And we found the people there delightful, very friendly. And when we drove on the way back, we did our shortcut version of it. And we drove 300 miles cross country, no roads at all. And we rolled up at various little villages, and hospitality was fantastic.
Of course, this were the days when it was under the Shah rather than the Islamic Republic. I don't know if that makes any difference because, as Chris says, it's the people that count.
I think it makes a difference as far as whether you're actually going to get into the country or not.
I think you're right, absolutely right, because there's the wider point that obviously we didn't realize at the time just how lucky we were. This was a window of opportunity that I don't think will ever happen again, certainly not in our lifetime. If you think of the countries, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Congo, etc., etc. You couldn't do it now. And it was just, we were so lucky that things just fell open for us in that little window.
It does seem that even in the 10 years since the first Overland happened, reading your book, and should have said that this journey took place in 69, 1970, that things seem to have gotten a little harder and a little more maybe violent, or felt like they were a little more violent, even in that 10 years after the first Overland. Was that your impression?
I don't know is the honest answer, but no, I don't think things had changed hugely, because by and large, once you got out of the sort of the government or the bureaucracy, people were kind. They were thrilled to see this peculiar vehicle arriving, and they could, by and large, they couldn't have been kinder or more hospitable. So that probably hadn't changed very much. I dread to think what it's like now, but certainly at the time, no.
Yeah, I would say that the real danger, before we set off, we worried about things like being eaten by a lion camping in Africa. But actually, the most dangerous animal on the planet is another human being. And since we've done our trip, of course, the world population has doubled. So I would think it's twice as dangerous now, frankly.
I think a good way to look at it. There was that one incident, I think in Congo, where you were encouraged to drive a certain way in a certain direction with two men with guns on top of the Land Rover.
Yeah, that was a very scary time. The Congo was a seriously frightening place, actually.
It was.
And the green gloom, we never saw the sky. The jungle was so dense, one sort of felt as though you're almost indoors. It's most peculiar. There were no roads, and we just followed footpaths which were made by pygmies and things like that. And we came to a tree across, blocking our way, and I got out to check what was happening, and I just felt the barrel of a gun in the back of my head. And these two guys said, "Come on," in French, which we pretended not to understand, and give us the keys. They wanted the Land Rover. And there was a bit of a stalemate, and we sat trembling inside the Land Rover and said, "If you want to come with us, you've got to get on the roof." We did plan how we could separate them and overpower one of them and get their gun and deal with the other one. But I think it would have ended up with all of us being dead probably by then. But Mike, you remember that vividly, don't you?
Yes, we decided before we set off that we weren't going to have firearms because they were going to be more trouble than they were worth, and would we ever either be able to or want to use them? And there was no point, once we were held up at gunpoint, we couldn't escape because we were crawling along at 2 miles an hour, so people could walk faster. It all actually worked out very well in the end, funnily enough, because they got on the roof. They agreed that they would not come inside the vehicle. So for 2 days, I think it was, we took them to what was Standerville and had been renamed Kisangani, which is where they wanted to go, and luckily where we wanted to go. And I think it's a bit difficult to describe. As Chris says, the road was almost non-existent, but there were these huge, great, half-filled with water trot ditches, and there wasn't much traffic. But on each side, the traffic had backed up, and the idea was that one would drag a vehicle through it from one direction and then from the other. So this could take up to half a day by the time you got to the front of the queue. But because we had the soldiers, we were, slightly embarrassingly, put straight to the front of the queue. So we must have saved ourselves a day and a half with these things. So to that extent, we were lucky. And then once we got to Kisangani, they disappeared.
That funny thing where people say when you're a hostage, there's a sort of rapport does develop between you and your captor. And they were really quite thankful when they eventually disappeared after 3 days sitting on the roof. But Kisangani was just, it was gunfire all night, screaming. There were no shops, no infrastructure. And we met the most amazing doctor, Dr. Barlovats there, who was, I think he was a Yugoslavian, wasn't he, Mike?
Yeah. His wife was Belgian and he was Yugoslav.
And because of our United Nations and UNICEF sort of connection, he invited us to stay at his house. And I've never seen, it was like a piece of cheese. It was just full of holes, bullet holes in all the doors and the windows, the ceilings. And he said he was regularly the target for a few pot shots people would take at him. It was an awful place.
But his house ought to have plenty of fresh air given all the ventilation.
Yeah, but it was all so hot and sweaty that the last thing he wanted was, I don't think it was much fresh about the air. He was an extraordinary man, because Kisangani was, when the Congo collapsed into anarchy after independence. Kisangani it's about the second or third biggest city in the place. And it was one of the centres of the Civil War. And he was about the only medical doctor there. And one of the armies took his vehicle and insisted that he did this, that, and the other. And he said, fine, if you don't give me back my vehicle, I can't do a medical practice, and therefore you don't get a doctor, which was, in the circumstances, an incredibly brave thing to say. So he got his vehicle back, and he managed to practice medicine, as far as I know, through all the worst of the atrocities in Stanleyville, as it then was. And I'm pleased to say they've now named a medical centre there after him. He was an extraordinary man.
I can't imagine staying in a situation like that and being basically the only real person who can patch people back up from all that atrocity.
There's a certain amount of security that comes with that, given that the soldiers need patching up too.
Yeah.
They're going to keep him somewhat safe in order to have that access.
But the interesting thing was there was quite a collection of UN Land Rovers there. We thought, oh, that's great, the UN are here. But they had to abandon it because the Congo became an unmanageable situation. They just left all the vehicles there and the locals were using them.
And of course, the Congo is an example of what we were saying 10 minutes ago, this incredible window of opportunity we had. It had just opened up to people being able to go into the Congo almost as we arrived.
Yeah. We were the first to get visas to drive in, and they said, we don't know if you'll get through or not, which was fairly accurate advice at the time.
But you did get through.
We did get through.
And we were glad to get out, I have to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
How long in total were you in the Congo?
Probably 10 days, I would think.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Sounds like what the American Wild West at one point, where there was, you said, just random shooting and screaming. And
Yeah, but there were no bridges and there was floating pontoons to get across the rivers and stuff. It was really quite hair-raising stuff. One I remember was just a metal pontoon with a sort of steel mast fitted to it. And we just drifted down the river till it hit a hawser, stretched across the river, and then we ran it. That was what propelled us across the river to the other side.
Also, there was a rope or string of some sort across the river?
It was a metal cable.
Cable. Oh, wow. So it just guided it in then?
Yeah, but trying to get on and off those ferries, the weight of the Land Rover and stuff, we just very nearly got tipped into the river each time.
Reminds me of Top Gear in the glory days when they would do these adventures, but you guys actually were doing the real thing, not playing around for television.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have a team of BBC fixers to pave the way for us. Yeah,
exactly. You were your own. You end up being your own fixers.
We realised quite quickly when I think we broke down, I think in Germany, and all the lights went out, and we thought, oh God. And we really did realise that we were on our own. And in places like the desert, if the Land Rover didn't start in the morning, you had to just sit down and work it out and get going again.
Who was the mechanic for the journey?
That was Waxy. So he was sent off on a brief mechanics course. But we took it in turns with various jobs and things, putting the tent up at night and somebody cooking, lighting a fire, those sorts of things.
And you had a unique tent, if I recall correctly, that went up, I think, quite quickly?
Yes, it was an igloo tent, which was basically you pumped it up. And it had the advantage that it was a source of huge fascination every time we put it up. You'd be in what you thought was an isolated bit, and after about 15 minutes, you had a huge crowd around you watching you, which was okay. But the idea was that there would be places, which indeed there were, where a conventional tent, you wouldn't be able to get the pegs in because the ground was absolutely rock hard, etc., etc., etc. Hence, we chose the igloo tent.
Funny enough, one of the places we camped in the Congo, because we couldn't move any further, we were stuck in a great sort of morass of mud and fallen trees. And we put the tent up. We heard rustling in the undergrowth, and all these little pygmies arrived with bows and arrows and blowpipes and stuff. And they were so fascinating. We reckon that we got about 25 or possibly even more into the igloo. They really loved it. They thought it's fantastic.
It's the new question. How many pygmies can you fit in an igloo tent?
Could all three of you fit in the tent yourselves?
Oh, yeah. Luckily, in those days, we probably didn't snore like we do now.
We rotated because there was one good piece of foam rubber to lie on. So every third night you got. It was a similar system, if you like, when with the vehicle itself, because we had 2-hour shifts. So one of us would drive, one would be the navigator. So those were the two in the front, and then one would, I think you could hardly go to sleep, but anyway, lie down in the bit between the 60-gallon tank and the back door.
And that's when you got the mattresses then, or the pads.
Yeah, but Mike said we did 2-hour shifts. That was apart from in Ethiopia, where it got so scary. We limited ourselves to 10-minute stints, and you were just glued to the seat.
Why was it scary?
Free fall down scree slopes and things. There was just no roads at all.
So it just took everything you had to keep moving and keep on the road that switching off every 10 minutes made sense.
Yeah.
I think in Ethiopia, this was the, quotes, main road to Nairobi. There was a fairly precipitous scree down to a ravine. And over this ravine that was a nightmare in itself. And then you got there to discover this wooden bridge, a lot of whose planks had gone missing. I can remember we stopped and we literally drew straws as to who was going to drive over it. I think it was you, Chris, wasn't it?
I don't know. I know we had to take the planks out, and the ones that we just crossed over, we had to put in front. So we inched forward about a foot at a time.
Yeah. And we took everything out off the vehicle to make it as light as possible. That was a really scary moment because I guess if we hadn't got across that ravine, there was no other road. So home we went, but we didn't. We crossed it and carried on to Nairobi.
So the bridge potentially hold the weight, but there were holes in the bridge. And so you used the pieces of the bridge to keep the base, if you will, the road going, and you would pick up the ones in the back and move them to the front.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
But having said there are no roads in Ethiopia, wow, what a spectacular country it was. Absolutely wonderful country.
Is it mountainous or?
Hugely, yes, yes.
I'm not familiar.
We had problems with the injectors or with the jets, with the fuel. They really struggled at the high altitude in places, so complete lack of power.
Especially when you're laden with all sorts of 60-gallon fuel tank. And all your gear.
They don't start out with much power to begin with, so there's not much to lose.
So what engine was in 10?
You probably got us there. We weren't mechanics, but it was a 4-cylinder petrol. It was a bog standard Land Rover at the time. So I would think it was...
The 2 1/4?
Probably, yeah.
Which, as Harold said, has very minimal horsepower. How did you get all the gear that you took out of 10 then across that bridge? Did you have to make one track then with you guys carry the stuff over yourselves?
I think walking, there were the struts that held up each side, so you could probably just shuffle along across those all right. But there is a picture in the book of the bridge, which is really quite scary.
Yeah, I did note that when I'm reading, I took that note down about this Ethiopia-Kenya border crossing bridge is all the note I took because that bridge looked really scary. And right after that, you almost got stomped by an elephant.
Yeah, that was further down in Mozambique, but it just served to illustrate the glorious unpredictability of what we'd see or do or be or where we might be at the end of every day. But that was what made it so exciting.
We woke up, put our heads outside the tent, and there was this elephant with about 50 yards, if that, away. And we thought, thank heavens it put its feet elsewhere rather than on the tent.
Yeah.
Did you ever figure out why? Were you near one of its babies or feeding ground or something?
I don't know. We just hid behind the Land Rover for sort of 20 minutes. It did bellow a lot and flapped its ears and stuff and pretended to run towards us. But thankfully, it got bored in the end.
Maybe it had become upset with Land Rovers after all those years.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Bulgaria, and Harold knows why, and everyone else knows why. I'm a Bulgarian American. My grandmother comes from Bulgaria, so I'm always interested when I see Land Rovers going through Bulgaria. And you guys think you were at the head of a motor rally going into Bulgaria?
Yes, this is something I completely forgot about until we were putting the stuff together for the book. And apparently, because there's a newspaper clipping where we told this story, so I don't think we got round to inventing stories by then. But I think we were crossing the border, weren't we? Or something, and there was this motor rally going on, and somehow we found ourselves at the head of it, and all these villagers were waving flags and clapping.
Yes, yeah, extraordinary. The roads were pretty non-existent in Bulgaria. It was really quite a struggle, but it was a nice place though. Lots of fruit and stuff along the roads when there were roads. But yeah, we camped in a vineyard one night, which was quite a good place. And we were woken in the morning by the owner with the biggest box of Muscat grapes I've ever seen. And they were delicious, wonderful.
Good to hear. I'm glad you had good positive stories about Bulgaria. You didn't get into Macedonia, though.
No.
That's my grandfather's side. He was Macedonian. So I did get to visit Macedonia and Bulgaria in 2015. Maybe it was 2005 now. Anyway, but there are certainly roads.
It was at a time when Europe was basically divided between the Warsaw Pact countries in the East and Western Europe. It was,
right.
You crossed the dividing line, and it was a very different atmosphere, I think.
Lots of propaganda posters and things, I remember.
Was there much trouble crossing the Iron Curtain at the time? Or was it just formalities?
Just
formalities. I don't think. We did give someone a lift who'd got a huge cactus, which was the most out-of-body experience I can remember from that. What the hell he was doing with a cactus trying to cross a border, I don't know. But anyway, we gave him a lift. But I remember that was quite a sort of feature. And one other place where we stopped, we were constantly being moved on by the police, either if we were camping where they thought was not a suitable place. But we stopped in the one town centre, and immediately the most enormous crowd started to gather, and it became quite unmanageable. And we opened the back door of the Land Rover, and they saw old newspapers, and between them, they tore up all these pieces of newspaper and hid the bits in their pockets. Queue for the police to arrive and move everyone on, including us again. But I think people were just starved of information.
Right, because this is long before the internet and long before even cell phones.
Yeah,
we're talking radio at this point.
Back when censorship was an easier thing for a government to do.
Yeah, and of course the communications in general didn't exist, certainly not the way we know them now. There were no mobile phones. Once you left a city, nobody knew where you were, and you didn't know where anybody else was.
And you didn't know where you were because you didn't have GPS. How did you communicate then back to, I guess, back home with your friends and family? And also you were part, I know we didn't mention this at the beginning, but you were part of a United Nations Association trip, and I'm sure you're in communication with them. How did that take place?
Old-fashioned letter, to be honest. We had a series of post-restaurant addresses, and we would arrive in Delhi, for example, and we go to the post office, collect our mail, and then we'd post everything that we needed to from Delhi. And once we'd done that and said to the UN and people, here we are in Delhi, we've got this far, then we'd move out again, and that would be the end of us until we got to the next post restaurant. And that's the only way we could really communicate. There wasn't any other way. I know later in my life, I worked for my sins in southern Sudan, and even there in the mid-70s, there was no telephone or anything like that. Yeah, it was, as I keep on saying, it was a completely different world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely disappeared from our world, is sending letters ahead of time to some collection point. You'll get there when you get there.
Some places there were just no maps. We couldn't find maps of various places like Afghanistan, Iran, northern India, places like that, Burma. There were just no maps. But we had a Phillips atlas and a dash-mounted little compass, which looked like something out of a Christmas cracker. And it really was as simple as saying, when we get to Delhi, turn left. Because generally speaking, there was only one road. So navigation and stuff was quite difficult.
You did not drive into Nepal. Can you tell us a little more about getting into Nepal? And because it sounds like seems like it's a Land Rover heaven there's lots of old series trucks still there, but you didn't get to take your series truck into Nepal.
Because in that altitude, they don't have enough power to get out.
But it was actually a technical reason. We hadn't got a carnet, which was required by India, and it caused us endless problems trying to get in and out of India. And so we actually decided to leave 10 at the border with Nepal and just get a local bus, which took nearly all day. And as the crow flies, it was probably about 50 miles, but it was just up very steep mountain passes. But lovely place, a lot cleaner than India, we noticed, and spectacular views, inevitably.
It was the height of the hippie trail in those days. I guess that's why India wanted carnets, so it didn't become a huge graveyard for Land Rovers.
Were there a lot of other travelers on your journey?
We met some people in Istanbul who were in a VW, and they were driving out to India. I think in the 60s, that was, as Mike says, the hippie trail. There were a lot of people from Europe driving out to India for the free availability of marijuana and such. But generally speaking, through places like Iran, very little traffic at all. So we didn't really see many other places. And when you camp at night, the occasional lorry would stop to check if you're okay. It was really quite remote and not much other traffic or other travellers.
Sorry, just developing on that, I can remember nights when we would camp in Iran in the desert, which was marvelous in its own right. So all the stars you saw, because there was no light pollution. And about 20 minutes before it arrived, you could hear this lorry coming, and then 20 minutes the other way, because there was absolutely nothing else. It was
the noise of the corrugations. That was the terrifying thing. The corrugations were appalling.
Did you have to get new teeth when you were done with the journey? All the rattling about. Another country you didn't get into, if we're having some sort of competition with the First Overland, is into Burma. I know you guys tried. Can you tell us a little more about the Burma attempt? Myanmar?
I'll start anyway. But yeah, Burma at that stage, and as far as I know, still is the case, you really can't drive across Burma. The Americans had built a road through the jungle during the war, in the war against the Japanese. The jungle had reclaimed that road, which is probably not quite the case 10 years earlier with the other expedition. So in effect, Burma was a no-go. You couldn't cross it. We wanted to get to Singapore. We did deliberate putting it on a boat, but it was so expensive, it was ridiculous. So that's why we, in effect, turned round at Burma, but not without Chris and I deciding we would actually put our feet into Burma.
So you're asking me to explain now. So we had an inflatable lilo, and we attached it to a very long length of rope when we reached the border, which was the River Nath. And Mike bravely was the first one to launch off and got to the other side, pulled the lilo back. Then I crossed as well afterwards. And we were greeted by a man in a pork pie hat who spoke absolutely perfect English. And he was obviously the local whatever. But he said we were the first people to have come in for 22 years on that border crossing. And we walked on all afternoon just to check what things were really like. And it would have been impossible. The bridges had gone. There was no road at all. And we were told that to get to Rangoon would take 2 weeks in a sampan and on bullock carts and all that sort of thing. So it was turnaround time.
What's the terrain like in that area?
Very pretty. Lots of parrots and that sort of thing. But now, of course, it's the centre of the biggest refugee camp in the world with what's going on in Myanmar. And they've all come across the border into Bangladesh. A very sad thing. The beach at Cox's Bazar is the most beautiful piece of coast. And we drove along 72 miles of just white sand, not a soul on it. And now that's just covered in a tented village, really.
So you did get into Burma on foot.
We did.
But you didn't get able to cross Burma.
No.
But we didn't get a stamp in our passport to prove it.
There we go.
We do have photographs of us with the sign saying the Union of Burma. Could have photoshopped it nowadays, but we didn't occur at the time.
Going back a little bit, you had a harrowing experience in getting into Iraq, and you were there at another precipitous time when there was a coup going on.
Yeah, and luckily without any radio, we hadn't a clue what was going on. And my fault. I was taking photographs across the border, and clearly that was not a very sensible thing to have done. And an army patrol came up and said, "What the hell are you doing?" Ripped the film out of the camera, and we were under arrest. And it wasn't until after a very scary period of time that we were driven into Basra to give us a meal after we hadn't eaten it for 2 days in prison. And there were people hanging off the street lamps on piano wire. And we'd driven into a coup which had brought Saddam Hussein and his nice little pals to power. So we had a very narrow escape, actually. Very scary time.
Definitely sounds like it. And that's just all because you were taking photographs at the wrong time.
Yeah, it was, yes, I had to promise not to take photographs at borders after that. That was a lesson hard learned. They imprisoned us. It was like something out of a James Bond movie, because the guy that interrogated us had lost his hand, and he had a sort of Bakelite stub with a silver hook.
Oh, geez.
And he kept questioning us, and we were taken out along this corridor, which had posters, one of which was the then UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson being put into a vice and squeezed until his eyeballs popped out with spurts of blood. But the most alarming thing was that there was actually real blood all along the corridors. And God knows what was going on there.
Wow.
Horrible place. Before we set off, an uncle of mine, he said, if you're going to Basra, that's the arsehole of the world. And he wasn't wrong, actually.
He wasn't wrong, yeah. Maybe we'll move to something a little nicer, the Sahara. In driving the Sahara, I noted in the book that there were no landmarks at all as you're driving, and you're doing about 5 miles an hour, and it didn't look like you were moving at all. That's an interesting sensation I've not experienced.
Yeah, there aren't that many features in the Sahara. At the time, the French I think it was the 1920s, had put these every kilometre, they put a sort of marker. But a lot of those had either been buried in sand or taken away. There were enough to help us at times. I think the main difficulty, two things, obviously the heat, because by this time it was May, I think. So
yeah,
it was
just getting into
hot.
June, wasn't it?
June.
Hottest time of the year.
Yeah. And the second thing was, which we got quite good at in the end, you've got to keep looking out for quicksand and obviously avoiding it. So that did make you go slowly, because if you got into quicksand, God knows what would have happened. We would get up as soon as light, drive for maybe 2 or 3 hours until it got too hot, hopefully find a thorn bush, throw the tent over it, hide underneath it, maybe have another hour's drive as it cooled down a bit before it got dark, and gradually made our way across the Sahara.
One of the most bizarre things that happened were we'd stopped and we were camped underneath the Land Rover to get a bit of shade, and this little speck appeared on the horizon. It got closer and closer. It turned out to be a man on a bike, and he was travelling west to east, and we were in the middle of absolutely nowhere. We couldn't see anything on the map for hundreds of miles in any direction. And he had a couple of pillars of salt strapped to the back of his bike. It was a most extraordinary encounter.
And this is a pedal bike?
Yeah.
Wow. So he was transporting salt?
Yeah. But where he was going or where he'd come from, heaven alone knows. These very odd things happen.
I guess you were on some general trail, as you were saying, Mike.
I think from memory there were 2 trails, one on the west, one on the east across the Sahara in those days. There's probably a motorway across it now. But at that time, yeah, there were just the 2 routes across the
From northern Nigeria, we had to check in with sort of desert control, so to speak. So the army there would check the vehicle, check the people, and we had an essay written in our passport saying that we'd left in a certain direction, certain time of day. And we had to leave in convoys, but being so hot at that time of year, there were only 3 vehicles. One of which was driven by a Swiss doctor with his passenger. One was a heavily overloaded lorry going to Libya. So we were told we'd be at the back because we seemed most suitable to help if anyone broke down. The result was that the lorry just sped off into the distance. And we followed the Swiss doctor in his Haflinger, which just exploded after about a couple of hours. We had to tow him back to base and then set off on our own. And over the course of about 2 or 3 days, the lorry would pass us. So everyone was going a completely different route. It was most peculiar. And the conversations went like, should we go to the left of those mountains or to the right? But it was, interesting. I think coming from
one slightly amusing story when I must have been the border going into Algeria, and we came to this hut. And we thought this was the frontier post, so we went in with our passports. There was absolutely nobody there. It wasn't locked or anything like that. And we thought we could be here for weeks before somebody comes. So what we did was we got 2 or 3 stamps that were lying on the desk and put them in our passport and stamped them. And off we went again.
A self-service border crossing.
Needless to say, about half an hour later, we came to the real frontier post. And they wanted to know, where we got these stamps in our passport. And that was the one advantage of the fact there was no communication those days. There was no way they could check that our lie that somebody had stamped them for us was...
Somebody had stamped them.
Well, we had, yes.
Just wasn't an official border guard. How long did it take you to cross the Sahara?
10 days, was it?
Yeah, I was going to say 10 days, yeah.
And then did you fuel up right before? I can only imagine traveling across the Sahara in the heat and desolation.
60
We
gallons.
drove with the bonnet open. We had the bonnet sort of propped open, and we rerouted the hose from the radiator all around the internal, underneath the bonnet, right around the engine compartment to give us a bit more cooling. But the most extraordinary thing happened when we were halfway across the desert. It actually started to rain. And so we were incredibly lucky that rather than being incinerated, we actually got some quite cool weather.
Wow. How long did it rain for?
Oh, it was quite heavy, but it was about half an hour or something. And then, of course, the clouds dispersed and it was searingly hot again. But it did leave puddles and things. It was really quite extraordinary.
That was your ration of rain for the year.
Yeah.
There was a sandstorm, but very luckily for us, it was just as we were coming to a town. We weren't trapped in the middle of nowhere with sand whirling about us.
Yeah, it did. Actually, the sand really did hurt, didn't it, on bare skin? It was really quite painful.
Were you finding sand in 10 by the time you had gotten back to the UK? Was there still sand in it?
Yeah, it's sand in everything. Sand in the food, sand in shoes, sand in... Actually, the worst dust and stuff we had, I think, was in Iran from the corrugated roads there. The Land Rover was just full of about a really good covering of grey dust.
So you were transporting dust across country lines.
Yeah, indeed.
I went off-road on the trail up in Canada once, and as I was coming back into the U.S., the guard said, I could make you go back and clean the vehicle off because that mud on there is technically transporting soil into the U.S. I was like, really, dude? He goes, no, you can go ahead. But,
there was actually, going back to the Congo, when we arrived in Kisangani, we were ordered by the police to go down to the Congo River and wash the car, I seem to remember, because it was completely covered in red dust and earth and mud and what have you.
I think they thought we were Belgian, possibly.
So you clear the Sahara, and then you cross at Gibraltar and make your way back to the UK. Any issues coming back into Europe?
Well, inevitably, UK customs spent... I don't know how long unpacking every single thing in the Land Rover.
Don't they know what you just did?
Boxes.
Don't they know where you came from?
Yeah, which was a slight disappointment because we expected a slightly better reception than that. But having been allowed to load first onto the ferry and given a meal in the restaurant and all that sort of stuff, we found ourselves in the customs hall about 2 hours after everyone else had gone.
So they unpacked everything, found all the dust from the Sahara.
And the routine, of course, is just to tip everything out of boxes and leave it out of boxes, and then you've got to pack it all back up again.
I think it's fair to say that once we hit the tarmac in Algeria, we knew we'd done it, really.
Yeah.
Short of a calamity, because we crossed the Sahara. So to a certain extent, the last couple of weeks was an anticlimax, but it obviously had to be done. But the Sahara was the last great challenge.
Yeah.
So as you get back into Charing Cross, where you started, there was a press strike. So you didn't have all the press that you were expecting.
No, but we did get quite a lot of coverage, but it was in dribs and drabs of various sort of TV appearances and articles in newspapers and that sort of thing, and magazines, special interest magazines. But not having jobs, what was very good was actually to be able to earn a bit of a living giving talks to various schools and colleges, and there's an amazing number of people actually wanted to hear about the journey, and so we used all our 35mm slides to illustrate it, and it was it's kept off the breadline for a bit.
By the by, I've actually got a booking for next year to tell the story to some women's institute or something, so it's still going on,
and that's why you're here.
That's great to hear.
Why we're here.
This is supposed to be the longest land journey ever taken. Is that right?
That's what we were trying to do. Whether it has been or not is, I think the jury's out on that. But I think there was a couple in a camper van in the States who drove around in ever-diminishing circles that made it to the Guinness Book of Records. But we think we did okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think that the U.S. couple, that doesn't make any sense to me, because I think what you guys did is you went through multiple
I think
countries,
the journey
right?
has to have a beginning and end. Otherwise, our
Yes,
DHL delivery drivers could claim the longest journey.
Yes,
And
you
it's
actually
gotta
did a
end somewhere.
journey instead of just doing circles, laps, like around a course.
It all starts getting very technical about whether it was a continuous journey, i.e., did you have to, as we did, put our vehicle on a boat to go down the Red Sea? There's all that sort of stuff. But to me, it doesn't really count, but then I'm biased.
I feel like some of the hostage situations should have canceled out those shippings of the vehicle. Yeah.
And also at that time, there weren't roads everywhere either. Sometimes you were making your own roads. You were still traveling. You were still getting the vehicle from place to place.
And one of the other scary scrapes we got into, of course, was having escaped from Iraq, we drove down to Jordan along the oil pipeline and then down to the Red Sea, and find ourselves camped on the beach at Aqaba, whilst the Jordanians and everyone and the Israelis were very keen to blow each other's heads off. And at the time, where we camped on the beach, they had what they called the human frogs, which were Egyptian frogmen who swam out into the bay to fix limpet mines to the Israeli ships in the Aqaba harbour. And we kept saying, "You're a bit too close to our tent. Can you move away?" It was the most bizarre situation.
That was a big gamble, to be not so much what Chris said, but also it was a big gamble because if we couldn't get a boat down to Africa, what did we do? And I think we were about a week, weren't we, in Aqaba? And eventually this boat said, "Yeah, we'll take you."
Yeah, carrying green peppers from Ethiopia, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The SS Frigo fruit.
So to bring us back around, where do we think 10 is now?
We wish we knew, I think, is the answer to that. But
you said there's been a search for it.
There has been a search, and we put out as much information as we can and put on posts on Facebook and that sort of stuff to see if we can find any news of him, but sadly not so far.
Is it thought to be still in India or somewhere else?
We've no idea, really no idea.
Whatever power the podcast has in the Land Rover community, we're going to try to help you track it down. So our listeners, if you have any leads on 10, and we'll have certainly pictures and provide those so people can see it and get other information on it. We should try to find this is another storied truck in the Land Rover community that needs to be rescued.
Absolutely, yes.
It's probably in the hands of someone who's still shoveling sand out of it.
No doubt.
We could say that if anybody has information leading to the discovery of 10, we're prepared to give them a free copy of the book.
There you go. One thing about 10 that I like, on the roof rack has a nice, interesting way of getting up. You have the ladder on the side instead of on the back.
If you put it on the back, you can't open the back door.
The next time that you see a side ladder is in the new Defender. They put that's side ladder.
Oh,
but everything is on the back.
Claim some royalties for that.
I think you should talk to JLR. Tell them, hey. Was this roof rack, was that standard equipment at the time, or was that something that was
made? No, we had it specially made. There was a company up in South London making roof racks of various vehicles, and it was made to fit and all the rest of it.
So there you go. You should get some royalties for that. There you go. That's the way to do it. There you go. Track that down.
Or at least a new Defender or two.
That's right. Land Rover likes to hand out Defenders to people. I think you guys need to get on that circuit too. We should get you in on the circuit and talk about your story.
Yeah, but only if they throw in
the reliable as 10, of course, and we wouldn't have a clue how to fix it if something went wrong.
And you'd have to insist that they threw in the side-mounted ladder.
Yes. One of the things about 10 was that Chris had done on the back door a map of our route, which he painted in as we progressed. And it was a source of endless fascination to people. We got great crowds looking at it and pointing at it. It was a masterstroke.
Retired people do that with their motorhomes here in this country. They have a map of the U.S. and they get the little stickers for each state they visit.
So following your journey, did you guys stay with Land Rovers or going camping or taking further journeys?
We do regularly meet up. We have what we call a boys' weekend every year. And we've worked our way through the alphabet once, and we're probably on the second ring. So places beginning with A to start with and B and so forth. So we go away for a couple of nights and stay somewhere, a pub or Some were different each time. But I don't think we've been on a camping holiday, have we, Mike? Since then?
Not that I can recall. I think we've done our lifetime's experience of camping. And anyway, that nice foam rubber we lay on, I think doesn't exist anymore.
I should hope not.
Must be nice to have your own mat at this point, not have to share it.
Exactly, yes. So some very strange things happened. We found when we got to India that we were really the centre of press attention there, and for some reason, the Indian public really did latch onto what we were doing, and they insisted that we held a press conference, and which all went well. I think each of us spoke for about 20 minutes and stuff, and it was interviews on radio and TV, and it was splashed all over the newspapers and things. And we even made the main news bulletin, I think, of the day in India. So they must have been desperate for something to put out. As a result of that, we were camped on the lawn outside UNICEF, and this huge black limo pulled up alongside. And inside was General Hilmi II, who is the Egyptian ambassador to India, and a great Anglophile and mad keen on camping. And he insisted that we went round for dinner at the embassy, which we did. And he said, when you return, you must come and camp in the garden. And it ended up a lot more than that. And he actually put us up in very comfortable beds and had breakfast in bed. And I think when the Egyptian Prime Minister flew out to Delhi, he had to go and stay in the local Premier Inn or something, because we were ensconced in all the very luxurious accommodation. But a very nice man, actually. A bizarre situation.
There's a good discussion of him in the book. Speaking of the book, where can folks get the book?
We probably shouldn't say you can get it on Amazon, but you can. But we'd rather everyone went to Porter Press, which is www.porterpress.co.uk.
And we'll definitely have a link in the show notes, thanks to friend of the show, Martin Port, actually, for putting us on to talk to you guys today. So thanks to Martin. Or get it from, especially here in the U.S., you can go to your local bookshop. I'm sure they'd be happy to track the book down for you.
Yeah, both of them that still exist.
Yes. There's a movement to have local bookstores, and it's a good thing. Yeah, we'll have a link to the book in our show notes, and it's called 3 Men in a Land Rover, 40,000 miles, 40 countries, one unique adventure. Did this gentleman turn you into Land Rover people at all? Just curious. You can say no. It's okay.
It's not a question you should ask us, because the answer is no.
That's fine. That's fine. It's okay. Just curious. I think the same thing happened to Tim Slesser. I think did the First Overland. I've had, like you said about camping, I think probably that's lifetime film.
Lifetime, right?
Yes, exactly. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much coming on the program, talking to us about your journey. I think on the podcast, we're going to hopefully make this advertise your journey a little more, and so that folks know about it, especially here in North America. And I suspect you're going to get an invite to come to the U.S. and talk about your journey.
Yeah, we've got to hurry up because we're getting quite old now.
There's a group here in the U.S. called ANARC, which is the Association of North American Rover Clubs. And there are Land Rover gatherings all across North America. And
fantastic.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure this is something that would interest the rest of the Land Rover community. If I can speak on behalf of the entire Land Rover community, which sometimes I like to do. Have you?
Really?
Yes, it does happen. Thanks again, gents. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed show number 152. Thanks this month to Chris and Mike, 3 Men in a Rover. Details on purchasing their book are available on the CentreSteer website. We'll have a link to their book. I have one in my hand. It's very cool. Lots of good photos and good information in addition to what you heard on the podcast today. They also have some other stories that you want to check those out. And Chris emailed me after that we recorded, and he wanted to let everybody know that, yes, I am aware that I said the world population has increased 50% since our trek. It's actually doubled, but maths was never my strong point. And that's a rare correction on the podcast, because we never make mistakes. Never at all. Never happen.
Not that we'll admit.
Yeah, and we didn't have to admit yet.
Yeah, that wasn't our mistake.
Fair. Well done. Yes, let's put on the guests. Perfect. That was sarcasm.
It's always the guest's fault.
And if you have information on the whereabouts of 10 is the number plate for 10 is TEN 423. Their Series 2A 109 with the 60-gallon tank. Let us know. We'll pass it along to Mike and Chris because we should track this vehicle down. It has done as much, maybe more, and gone through much as maybe more as Oxford has. We need to track this truck down and get it back into circulation.
And even if it's been dismantled, has been a chicken coop, it doesn't matter. Just let us know if you have any tips.
And also thanks to the one true Pax for his continued production support. Pax was able to fit us into this month's schedule for production while he, and this is in his words, adopts a Porsche Boxster.
Really? Does he
Yes.
need any more parts?
He might. He hasn't purchased it yet. Apparently, he is supposed to go Wednesday. We're recording this before Thanksgiving here in the U.S., and he's supposed to go Wednesday to adopt. Again, these are his words. Adopt a Porsche Boxster.
Pax, you need to bring a trailer to Latrobe. Seriously.
Okay.
I will hook you up.
Now, this is also one excellent way to get out of a Thanksgiving.
And also thanks to you guys, to Morgan and Harold and Dixon for coming on the podcast. As always, thanks guys for helping out and contributing to the podcast.
Yeah, $10 is $10, right?
And then I will wish you a happy Thanksgiving and a belated happy Thanksgiving to Dixon. Or do you celebrate both, Dixon?
Both.
Well
To
done.
me, the American one is the real one.
Ooh, nicely done. Nicely done.
Ooh.
We post a new podcast at the end of every month. Our website, CentreSteer.com, has all our shows to listen to and show notes with links to the stories and books that you can purchase discussed in today's podcast. You can directly support the podcast at patreon.com/CentreSteer, center spelled in the British spelling with an R-E. You can buy a t-shirt, sticker, or even buy us a tea. Visit our website for details. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear from you and what you're up to in your Land Rover.
On behalf of the entire North American crew here at the CentreSteer podcast, I'd like to thank you for listening today. We know you have a choice when it comes to your podcast content, and we do appreciate your choosing us. Please take a moment to look around you for any personal items you may be leaving behind, especially in the overhead bins. Remember, some items may have shifted during the show. Please watch out so you don't get robbed, carjacked, or arrested. And you may now resume your important things.
At this point, are we required to pronounce it Jaguar instead of Jaguar?
I didn't realize we could have Land Rover dad jokes.